Hi guys. Um, Normally you hear a do. So we have become accustomed to adjusting, I would say. By the way, this is Dr. Barry with the Rhyme and Reason podcast, episode number 25, coming at you. And today we are going to be winging it because unfortunately, about 180 seconds ago, or 3 minutes for the math impaired, we just got news from our guest who was supposed to be coming on, Mark Denny, that he is currently in the ER with his son who has an infection in his face. Something going on, and he needs to be transferred now to another hospital. So it's a big mess, and health and well being does come before an appearance on a podcast. So our thoughts and prayers are with Mr. Mark Denny and his son, and he will be rescheduled for a later date. We were in for a treat today, and just to give you a little history on the person we were bringing on, and hopefully this is a teaser enough for you to stay tuned in the future to hear him come on. But he was wrongly accused when he was 17 years old of some pretty horrendous crimes. He was put in prison and literally did 30 years in prison and was found, and the term, and it's a legal term, it's called actually innocent, was found actually innocent. And he was released at 46, almost 47 years old after doing 30 years. And he wasn't let out like on a loophole in the law or anything like that. The Innocence Project was involved, and he's going to have a heck of a story. However, although that was supposed to happen today, it's going to be in just based off our schedule, probably a few weeks from now. So in honor of National Recovery Month, National Recovery Day, we are going to bring somebody on that we really don't see on this show too often. And he is the man that keeps this show running from behind the scenes. He's the dude that blows up my guests, gets all their information, contacts them daily to make sure we're on schedule and on track to bring them on. He's a person that has been sober and living in recovery. He lives out in Austin, Texas, and we are going to bring on Mr. Greg Roselle.
What's going on, everybody?
Hey, listen, I don't think people understand kind of what goes into making a production like this happen every week, right? It's not a once a month thing. This is a weekly thing with tons of moving parts. And sometimes we just have to adjust. And as disappointed as I was, and I heard you on speaker with Mark, our guest, and, part of me kind of sunk because I know this happened to us a few weeks ago with Wesley Gear, who is scheduled to come on in early October. Look, shit comes up. A 12 in the afternoon on a Wednesday every week is not an easy slot to fill for people, right? It's right in the middle of a workday. It's right in the middle of people's busy lives. So I do want to give a shout out, to all the guests we have had on here that have made time for the Rhyme and Reason podcast as we are growing. It's been exciting times, but every once in a while, man, we're getting ready to go live, and then we find out the whole go live thing is go dead.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure you have been doing this, as far as production, and that's kind of your thing. You have another podcast that you're behind the scenes on, Toxicology, with Jason Cabello and Mr. Joseph Gordo. I tried to say that in my best Spanish accent. Mm-hmm. But anyways, I'm sure this has happened on that side too, where guests kind of fall through. So make me feel better, Greg, and tell me that actually happens and that it's not just a Rhyme and Reason podcast.
Well, if you really want to feel better, it absolutely has happened on that show, and they have asked me like we've got 30 seconds till the timer strikes go live, and they've been like, hey, will you just jump on and fill in? And I've typically said no, which is interesting, right? Because anyone who knows me, um, I'm very much like a big cheese. I don't mind being the center of attention. In fact, like I kind of thrive in that environment. I'm very outgoing. Um, but yeah, no, at work, I don't mind. I don't mind being behind the scenes in this kind of stuff, and it's kind of like it's a nice change of pace compared to my personal life, whether it's with my friends, my family, whatever, where I'm usually kind of taking charge in front and center. Um, yeah, it's an interesting change of pace being behind the scenes all the time. So I hope that makes you feel better. I haven't done it for them, so you got that going for you.
I I do. You made me feel very
Mhm,
special. I'm going to write about it later
mhm.
tonight and express my feelings down on paper because I'm getting a little warm and fuzzy on the inside.
Uh-huh.
So I definitely and listen, this could turn out just two dudes talking can turn out to be probably the best episode we've done with all the crazy guests that we've had on and high profile and low profile. To me, there is no profile, right? When you come on the show, it's one human being speaking to another human being, and we all have our story of what we've been through, what we've done, what we've gone through, the people who love us, the people who hate us,
Mhm.
and the jobs we do. We all wake up the same way every morning by putting 2 feet on the ground, um, and everybody has a story. And you keep a low profile. You're not a spotlight, sunlight in the light kind of guy.
Mhm.
You're like the G in lasagna.
And
You
listen,
move,
if you weren't gonna say it, I was going to. So,
you move in silence,
uh-huh.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing
Did I
like
get that right?
old Wayne. Yeah, it is. You did. Nothing like some old Wayne, man.
You're like the G in lasagna. So
Mhm.
let's get into this. And you had reminded me earlier. What did you remind me of that today is?
Oh, today is National Sober Day, and we are we exactly at the half? We're almost at the halfway point. It's the 14th of September, which is National Recovery Month. So we've got National Sober Day inside of National Recovery Month. So there's a lot going on right now, right? Especially in our industry, and also in other industries. Like I remember last year when didn't you do something, or I guess we Recovery Unplugged, but I know you were involved with it as well. Didn't we do something with the Miami Dolphins for Recovery Month?
Yeah, so we're actually doing it again with them. Last year, I don't know. Okay. So it wasn't for, excuse me, National Recovery Month. It was the first ever recovery day in the NFL, and the
Mhm.
Miami Dolphins were the first team ever to recognize and have a recovery day. Um, we are doing it this year. It's going to be November 27th, a home game against the Houston Texans. And
Mm.
yours truly,
Mhm.
okay, just take a deep breath, but
Uh-huh.
yours truly was asked to be one of the speakers at the NFL Recovery Day for the Dolphins.
Wow.
So I'm excited about that for many more reasons than just being able to speak there. I love to speak, but I've been a Dolphins fan my entire life and a season ticket holder for 26 years.
Yeah, it's a huge deal.
Okay.
That's a huge deal. If my Giants invited me to do anything related to that, it doesn't even matter what it was about. It could just be coming in and even if it's like rating the food that they serve, I don't care. I'd be all over it.
Yeah, it's I just think you bring up National Recovery Month,
Mhm,
and I'd like to go back to the almanac or
mhm.
the record book. Any type of history. When did Recovery Month start? And the reason I bring this up is if we look back 10, 15, 20 years, the concept of being in recovery, right, was anonymity. it was, there was a stigma associated with the term being an addict or an alcoholic. And I guess what I'm trying to say is it wasn't something that we were very proud to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And now this is being recognized nationally, getting a whole month for it. And that I think is huge. Now, yes, we have National Hot Dog Day and National Cupcake Day and, National, wear your socks on the wrong feet day. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, but this isn't a day, right? We have National Recovery Month. We have overdose awareness. I know the analytical person you are probably just Googled, when did National Recovery Month start?
I did.
Okay, what were the findings?
So it's a little earlier than I expected, to tell you the truth. But I feel like it didn't really come to the fore. I feel like it was similar to a National Hot Dog Day until just recently. It technically started in 1989, is what I'm seeing. However,
The month or the day?
the month, the month.
National Recovery Month. Okay.
National Recovery Month started in 1989. But I mean, I could say from a first person account, I haven't heard of it until, let's say, probably the past 5 years.
Right. It's never been and I could be wrong. There could be people out there that, throw huge parties to celebrate National Recovery Month, that they're avid National Recovery Month people. And this has been going on as a family tradition in their family since 1989. That's a possibility.
Right.
I highly doubt it, but, anything is possible in this world. But what I'm trying to get at is the stigma of being in recovery has gone from a black mark to a badge.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just made that up off the top of my head, but I like it.
Uh-huh.
It's gone from being, oh, you're in recovery, to, wow, you're in recovery. That's really awesome. And let me tell you, I have a sister who is struggling, or, right. I think that there has been a shift over the last decade because of people recognizing that addiction is actually a disease.
Right.
Right. And we don't try to get diseases. Well, for the most part, we'll leave the STDs out of this for a second, but we don't try to get diseases, right? This is not a moral dilemma. This is something that people are afflicted with. And at the end of the day, Greg, it has nothing to do with drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what we know about addiction, is that addiction can rear its head in many different forms.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're afflicted with the disease of addiction and we do pick up that first one and that second one, right? Something changes in our brain that leads us down a path where we do things we swore we'd never do. We go places we have no business going to, with people we shouldn't be with, until we get to a place where we try with all of our might and we literally are using against our will. That is as real as it gets in how we can describe active addiction. It's all fun and games until it's not anymore.
Yeah.
And then when you reach that point where it's not anymore, it becomes really hard to dig yourself out of the depths of despair.
Mm-hmm.
So every once in a while, you reach your hand out and you grab onto somebody who's freed themselves for a little assistance to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Not an easy feat. This is not, I can't believe you did what you did. It should be, I expect you to do those things. But if you're tired of the consequences, I can help show you other ways to be, with the hopes of arresting this terrible disease.
Yeah.
And I think that the public now, even, those who swore it would never happen to them, maybe they have a son or daughter it happened to, and there's a shift, right? And I think that the general public at this point, where it used to be something shameful, is now accepted.
Right.
It's now accepted. So
yeah. I think really anyone who grew up, specifically around my age, for context, I'll be 30 here in a little bit. I feel like things definitely really changed with my generation, in the sense of where, like, everybody got addicted to Oxycontin. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't matter who you were. It made no difference. You could be the all-star quarterback on the varsity football team. You know what I mean? And have a crippling addiction to opiate painkillers behind the scenes. It kind of, there was this switch almost from, like, drugs, or I should say, harder drugs, kind of switching from, like, fringe culture to becoming more mainstream, because everyone saw these pills and it was like, oh, this is a pill. A scientist made this and a doctor prescribes it. It can't be that dangerous, and as a result, I watched people, that you would never expect in a million years, right? To have a substance abuse problem, just fall victim to the circumstance, and I think that's also really what led to more people being accepting, because just like you said, you have these parents who never had those issues in their family before, and all of a sudden their picture perfect son or daughter is now addicted to opiates, right? And that was just the way that it was when I was in high school.
So you bring up some really good points. Okay, I got clean when I was 20 years old. Okay. It was 2 months shy of my 21st birthday. It was in 1996. And back then there were no Oxys. There was no Oxycontin. There were no Roxys. And I'm so grateful for that. Okay. Because I literally think that I would not be here sharing my story today or talking to you live had that been the case. When I got clean, heroin was viewed as you're homeless living under the bridge with a needle stuck in your arm. Heroin was a very dirty word.
Yeah.
If you were doing heroin, you had some serious problems. Like, you gave up on life. Okay. That's how heroin was viewed back then. And I think around 2005, 2006, here where I live in Broward County became the literal hotspot for pain clinics.
Mm-hmm.
There's a documentary that I'd like to recommend to our viewers, and I don't know if you've seen it. You probably have, but it's on YouTube. It's called Oxycontin Express. And it shows the way pain clinics worked, and it highlighted Broward County. At one point in Broward County, we had more pain clinics than we had McDonald's.
Wow.
And you had all of these people coming in from Kentucky, from Alabama, from Arkansas, and they were flying on this plane to come down because they were being sponsored by dealers here in South Florida. And what do I mean by sponsored? They would come down on this flight. And by the way, the flight down to Florida was nicknamed the Oxycontin Express, which is where that name for the documentary came from. And so these dealers, and this is the way the pain clinics worked. And now, mind you, at this point, I'm already clean 10 or 11 years. Okay. So I'm now, and I'm working in the treatment industry. So I'm seeing the effects of what is going on, at the start of, this was really the start of the heroin and the opiate epidemic, which became a pandemic, right? So these dealers would give these people from out of state $500, okay? And they would get in line at these pain clinics, and it was easy to get into these pain clinics. All you needed was an MRI. And so what did these pain clinics do? These pain clinics had these mobile MRI units that would literally park outside nightclubs at 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday night. And you'd walk in, you'd pay cash, you'd get this MRI, they'd mark it up, they'd say, oh yeah, you have a spot there, there's a herniated disc or whatever the case is, here's your disc. Just bring that to the pain clinic.
Wow.
And these pain clinics literally had armed guards that were standing outside. Lines were going around the building. Okay. You could purchase VIP passes
Oh my
for an
God.
extra $500 where you wouldn't have to wait in line. And then there was no insurance involved. It was all cash. You had to
Wow.
pay in cash. And a lot of these pain clinics had their own dispensaries, right? So they were writing scripts for 90, 180 milligram Oxycontins, and they'd write for 180, 30 milligram Roxycodones or whatever they were called, the blues.
Mm-hmm.
And this was going on every single day. These places were open from 7 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. Doctors' offices, okay,
Mm-hmm.
pain clinics. And what started to happen was these pain clinics were making millions upon millions of dollars all in cash. And these suburban, for no better term, of kids, right? These suburban kids were now getting hooked on these medications that were literally meant for people who were in hospice dying of stage 4 cancer. Okay? We're talking 180 milligrams of oxycodone.
Mm-hmm.
Just to put that in perspective, a Percocet comes in 2 forms. A Percocet is typically given to you by a doctor after you go through surgery, right? We've all had Percocets. Percocets are typically 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you even have the Perc 10s.
Mm-hmm.
One of those 180 milligram Oxycontins, if we do the math correctly,
Uh-huh.
it's like taking 18 of those at a time
Yeah, it's insane.
of the larger ones, or 36 of the 5 milligram ones.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how absolutely ludicrous that is? Well, Purdue Pharma and these manufacturers of the Oxycontin said, well, we have what's called a controlled release on these pills. So if you swallow it, you're not going to get all 180 milligrams at once. It will titrate through your system over a 24-hour period. And it's meant for long-term chronic pain to keep somebody out of pain. What they failed to mention, and what all of these suburban kids figured out,
Mm-hmm.
is that if you crush the pill up, guess what happens to that controlled release? It's gone,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, if you're going to crush a pill up, what options do you have to ingest it?
You got a few, but
So let's talk about that. What options do you have? You can
you got the
snort
nose.
it,
Yep, you got the
right?
nasal. You've got the
You
IV.
you can smoke it.
Oh yeah, that's a good one as
You
well.
can you could smoke right through that controlled release, which was big. They'd stick it on a tinfoil and take a pen and take out the center of the pen, so they had the long tube, and they would light the tinfoil on the bottom, and it would heat the pill, and they would smoke the smoke coming off of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you wanted the best effect, you would mainline it.
Mm-hmm.
You would inject it. Well, let's go back again to the mid 90s, where if you were using a needle and on heroin, you were literally homeless.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a fear of the needle because even addicts have boundaries, right? When we're in active addiction, we say, well, I might snort cocaine, but I don't shoot it. I might snort a Percocet, but at least I'm not shooting heroin, right? There was that line of crossing over from intranasal to IV drug use. But the fear of the needle went away.
Mm-hmm.
The fear of the needle went away because it took one person to shoot one other person up. Wow, this feels amazing. And now the needle became commonplace. And then in about 2007, 2008, these pain clinics got raided by the feds. All of them. Okay? Completely wiped out and shut down. The majority of them being here in Broward County. And these pills that were being sold on the street for $5, you could, when this whole pandemic started and everybody was in line at the pain clinics, you could buy these pills on the street for $5 each. You were getting them cheaper if you waited in line, which is where the dealers came in to sponsor the addicts who would have them buy and get 180 and 90, and they would cut them off and break them off a few, and then they would take the rest of the pills and sell them. These pills, once the pain clinics got raided, went from $5 on the streets to a Roxy, which was 30 milligrams, being $30 a pill, $1 a milligram. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was getting high, I didn't have $30 to spend on 30 milligrams of anything. Okay. Especially when I was used to getting it for $5.
Right.
$5.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? You now have tens of thousands of people that are strung out on these opiates with no end in sight. And now all of a sudden, their supply gets cut off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can speak from my experience. When you're doing opiates for a long time and that supply gets cut off and you stop cold turkey, what happens?
You go into some pretty gnarly withdrawals.
Yeah, you get super sick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Flacco on the corner, okay, in Opelika comes around and says, hey, I got this little bag right here, just a powder, similar to you're crushing up your pill. Go ahead and inject this. You're going to feel better. And guess what? This bag's only $5.
Mm-hmm.
What happens?
Everyone switches to the bag that's $5. There's a few that'll hold out as long as they can for their pride's sake. But I would say 9 times out of 10, everybody eventually folds and they switch to the bag from Flacco.
Which started the heroin epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You had all these suburban kids who never, you asked them 2 years prior, would you ever inject heroin? You know what their answer would have been?
No.
Fuck no.
Mm-hmm.
No way. That'll never happen to me. Not how I was raised. I wasn't raised like that. Right? So now you got all these people strung out on heroin. Then what happens? Let's see if you get this. What happens to the crime goes up. Forget about that.
Okay.
What happens to the heroin?
Oh, supply goes down, demand goes up. Is that what we're getting into? And then people start cutting it?
Cutting it with what?
Fentanyl nowadays.
Yes.
What?
Fentanyl, which is how much stronger than heroin?
I believe it's 10.
I think it's 100 times stronger.
It may be. I knew it was 10 or 100. I didn't want to shoot too high.
Add a zero. It's 100 times stronger than heroin.
Okay.
So what started happening?
People start overdosing.
People started dying.
Mm-hmm.
And not just people. Thousands upon thousands of people every year started dying.
Mm-hmm.
Around this time, it was, I think it was around 52,000 people a year in the United States were dying of an overdose. The last 2 years since the coronavirus pandemic, we've had 100,000 plus each year die of accidental overdose here in the U.S. That's not worldwide. That's in this country.
Mm-hmm.
That's the equivalent of 2 JetBlue airliners going down every single day in the United States, filled with people.
Mm-hmm.
That's sobering. Think about that stat. That is the equivalent of 2 JetBlue, or pick your, let's go 1 Delta, 1 JetBlue, okay? Going down every single day in the U.S. What kind of story would that be?
It would be huge, and you would think that something would happen, right? To either, if not, mitigate, prevent, that from happening any further.
Let's take it a step further.
Okay.
I'm going to get deep now.
Okay.
We're going to throw some salt onto the wound.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask you as a person.
Okay.
if 2 airliners a day were going down in the United States, would you continue to fly?
No, probably probably not. No.
Would anybody continue to fly?
No, probably not.
Do you see what I'm getting at here?
I do. I do.
That is how strong this disease is. That we continue to put ourselves in harm's way and do these things to ourselves. No one else is doing it to us. We do it to ourselves. Is completely mind-blowing. That we would continue on this path. Hence, why National Recovery Month is such an important month out of the year. Hence why addiction awareness is so important. And it baffles me that it's not more important than it is already. It baffles me how a mosquito can infect somebody with Zika years ago and affect 3 people, and we put billions of dollars into Zika prevention, right? Where we're not wanting to put money into getting people the help they need that can't afford it. It just baffles me. So that's my tirade. That's my my soapbox for the day. But I'm passionate about this. There should be help for all. And listen, treatment centers, you could be at the greatest treatment center of all time, which I feel Recovery Unplugged is the greatest treatment center of all time. I don't think that there's a staff that cares more about a client coming in than any treatment center in existence. I don't think there's a better program.
That's been my observation as well, working here for the past 5 years.
I don't think client care could be any better anywhere else. I don't think that the therapy, the treatment methodology, the modalities that we use could be any more exciting anywhere else, but it's still a business.
Yeah.
Okay? It's still a business because people like you who work for Recovery Unplugged, you need to support your family. You need to have a paycheck every week, right? We could all be philanthropists and we could all have passion the way that I do and the way that you do, but at the end of the day, you have to put food on your table, right? So I don't know what the solution is. I don't know how many grants can be given for people to get treatment. I don't know how many more centers could be open to give treatment to those that are not lucky enough to be able to afford to come to treatment. Yeah, there are a few state facilities. There's some county-run facilities. There's people who are on Medicaid. But if you ask anybody on Medicaid, they go to treatment, they keep them for 3 days.
Yeah.
I don't know of a long-term Medicaid place. I know of a few long-term free faith-based programs, which are great. Right. I know that they've incorporated drug and alcohol programs in the jails and in prisons. I think that's great. But what about the people that are not in jail, that are not in prison, that can't afford treatment, that need more than 3 days of help?
Yeah.
And it makes it really hard. We scholarship as many people as we can at Recovery Unplugged. We have a nonprofit, Face the Music Foundation, that will sponsor people to come in. We work with Music Cares as a co-sponsor. If you've been a musician and you have a history in the music industry, you can qualify for a grant to come in once in your lifetime, right? But aside from that, it's not easy to find resources. So I know we're getting pretty deep here. I did not plan on talking about any of this stuff. I planned on speaking with Mark Denny today. Okay. And you don't look like Mark Denny.
No, I'm not.
What led you to work within the industry?
Well, it definitely wasn't the money. I'll tell you that much. So I mean, my whole adult life, I've typically been in sales, right? And so before I started working in treatment, I was actually a personal banker, right? Which sounds fancy, right? I have no formal finance education, though. I mean, a personal banker is a salesperson at the end of the day, right? Like I was forced to open credit lines and quotas, and while they paid me well, I was like kind of just like yearning for something different. And I was young enough at the time too, where you know, I could kind of take a risk if I wanted to. And so I had a friend, Mr. David Mariano, who was I think he was like our programming director or something at the time. I don't remember his title. Uh, but he had texted me and he was like, "Hey, Recovery Unplugged has a few open positions. You should come check them out." And I knew I wasn't happy where I was, and I was like, you know what, like maybe taking a pay cut but doing something that seems meaningful would be worth it for me, and that's ultimately how I ended up here, right? And it was fun, dude. Being a tech was the best job of my life, right? Like,
Well, yeah, you're talking about being a tech, but there are, I'm sure, listeners that are listening right now. And hey, Zach, rest in peace to my former co-host. I love him. There are listeners that are listening right now that don't know what a tech is. So what's a tech?
So a
Besides
tech,
what you get if you like misbehave in an NBA game and you're given a tech.
yeah. So a tech in treatment is, my goodness, it's really even hard to put them in a box, right? But you are essentially like the client's ultimate ally. You are the first person they are going to go to when they have something good or bad to share with you. You're also the person that is waking everybody up on time, encouraging everybody to go to sleep on time. You can't really force anyone to go to sleep, so it's a lot of just encouragement, and you're with them all day, right? There is a tech, right, which is short for behavioral health technician, on property at Recovery Unplugged 24/7. And a lot of the shifts, if not all of them, have multiple techs, right? And so I found that to be incredibly rewarding, just because I was with people from the moment they walked in that front door, destroyed, disheveled, like just looking terrible, not even like a glimpse of hope in their eyes, to day 30 or even, day 40 or day 60, depending on how long they're there. And you watch people come alive, like literally you watch people come alive. And it's just really cool to watch those transformations, and then also have these people can confide in you, you know what I mean? And, come up to you and be like, I'm feeling some type of way about this. Like, I'm looking to talk it out. Do you have a few minutes? Like, I love that. Like who, I mean, I guess if you don't like people, you wouldn't love that, but I ate it up, those were some of the best days of my life, was my early career in treatment, because it was so simple, but so meaningful at the same time.
And then what happened from there? And yes, techs are probably one of the most vital roles that any treatment center can have, because it really shapes the client experience,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Elaine says techs are awesome. Yeah, I mean, and they're necessary, right? You have to have, and they work 3 shifts. So you have the morning shift, you have the 4 to 12 shift at night, and then you have the overnights, right? So each one of those techs are going to have a different type of experience with the client, right? The 4 to 12 at a PHP program is going to have a more casual type relationship with that client, because it's out of the actual clinical setting, where the 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. shift, it's a lot of making sure clients are getting to group on time, taking them to the case managers. And then you have the overnights, the overnight techs tend to meet the insomniacs.
Yep.
Right, the people who can't sleep and are smoking chain cigarettes outside their apartment.
Yeah.
But a positive behavioral health tech is going to create a positive experience for a client. It's going to make them feel comfortable. It's going to make them trust when they're in a vulnerable state, right? It's going to bring about a positive experience. So you teched for how long?
I think like a solid year and a half.
And what shift were you on?
Originally second when I started. And then when I became the lead tech, it was kind of like a hybrid shift. So I would be there from 10 to 6.
So you got first and second shift
Yes.
to
Yeah.
look after. I got you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
cool. And then, so you did that for about a year and a half. And then did you move from there into digital?
No, so I was an alumni coordinator after that.
Oh, that's right. I remember.
And then,
And what was that like?
whew, man.
What's an alumni coordinator?
So an alumni coordinator, you got several jobs, but if I could sum it up all in one, your responsibility is providing the best post-treatment environment and community for everybody that goes through the program, right? So for the people who stay in the area, you're going to be putting on events. You're going to be staying in touch with everybody. For the people that leave the area, it's going to be, phone calls. If someone comes all the way out here for treatment, but then I don't know, they got to go back to Idaho or something and they don't have a lot of resources. Like my job was to be their resource, until they could establish their own local resources and network. So that was a really cool job in the sense of like, because we did an alumni meeting too. We put on a weekly meeting, which was very similar to, any 12-step meeting or recovery meeting that you go to. And but it was only open to alumni of Recovery Unplugged's program. And so I got to watch these people pick up their 1-year chip for the first time and stuff like that, and since alumni coordinators work on property, I still got to see them on day one. You know what I mean? I got to see them go through that door, broken, shattered, hopeless, and then 365 days go by and now they're buff and glowing or whatever it is. Everyone goes through some sort of transformation that first year in whatever direction, but like you see people find themselves and get on their feet for the first time and find their voice. And then and then the cool part is then you get to watch them at the alumni meeting reach out to the people that are still under care. Who here needs a sponsor? All the half the community that's an inpatient will raise their hands, and you get to watch these people that went through the community a year ago just jump on them and be like, I'll show you the way. So that was really cool too.
That's awesome. And an alumni program is so important to a treatment facility.
Oh yeah.
It gives us ways to keep track of clients, that helps us build up also our data on how well people are doing post-treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks to the point that 30 days of treatment is not enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That you need that connection with where you were for a good year, a good
Mm-hmm.
solid year at least.
Mm-hmm.
Right, where you're staying in contact with the program, you're attending weekly alumni meetings, you've gone through intensive outpatient already, you've really formed a new network of people in your life that are bringing positive rather than negative. And that holds true, especially for the people who come from out of state that return back home that need kind of that. They need that anchor, right, to keep them anchored. So, all right, so you move from there, you go on to. At this point, do you go to the digital side?
Yes. At this point, I go to the digital side. So I did that for 2.5 years, 1.5 years. I don't know. It's tough to tell. I got hired into digital shortly after my 4-year work anniversary. So however that maths out, that's how long I did that for. And yeah, that one just kind of fell into my lap. It was interesting. I got a phone call one day and it was just like, hey, we have this internal position opening up. It's a little different than what you're doing now, but we think you'd be good at it. And, Rob, of course. Rob was like, oh, it's a content creator. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I don't like the sound of that. That sounds like an influencer. Like I'm not interested in that at all. But then, my now supervisor reached out to me and explained it to me a little bit more clearly. And I was like, oh, okay, I could dig that, and so what I do now is more or less project management for our marketing department. Right. We've got a bunch of really talented people on my team. I like to joke that I'm the only person on the team without talent. And then they all jump in and reassure me, no, it's not the case. What I mean by that is like, we have a content writer, right? So he's talented at writing. We have a graphics person. He's very talented at design. We have a videographer, very talented at filming and editing. And then we've got a social person who's also very talented at what they do. And meanwhile, my job is, how do I take all of these people and what they're skilled at and kind of turn it into something cohesive, where the goal at the end of the day is to help as many people as possible, right? So, pulling from this person and this person to create something, to deliver a message to someone who's suffering, or deliver a message to a loved one of someone who's suffering, right? In hopes that one of them will pick up the phone and get the help that they need, right? Or just educate themselves, right? Like, we have a ton of really awesome resources on our website that have nothing to do with necessarily admitting to treatment, but rather they're just educational material, So that's how that sort of unfolded. And truth be told, it's my favorite job I've had within the organization so far. So it ended up working out. Thank you very much, Ravella. I appreciate that.
I like that. Ravel's been commenting since the beginning of the show.
Uh-huh.
So we have at least one listener who's been with us from the start today. I don't see how many listeners there are at any time. I don't see any of that stuff because of the StreamYard thing we're on. And I'm not a producer. I don't have any of that back end material, but I like to see the consistency. So thank you, Ravella, for staying tuned in on this impromptu version of Rhyme and Reason. And Greg, you're doing a phenomenal job, if I do say so myself.
Thank you.
You're an easy person to talk to. And so basically what I heard from you was you have a lot of talented people around you, which makes you better.
Yeah, 100%. And that could be used as, a metaphor for a lot of things in life,
That's what I was thinking. The Dolphins have a very talented defense. They have a very talented wide receiver corp, right? They have some talented running backs, and they have, a good to okay quarterback. But when you're surrounded by talent, you can still look good.
Right.
And you could still win. So I would say you're winning. Now, in all honesty, you are very talented. But what it seems like from what I've heard is you've never really had experience doing what you're doing.
No, absolutely not. I've never, you can make the argument that being an alumni coordinator falls under the marketing tree, right? But as far as the capacity of what I'm doing now, no experience whatsoever.
But this is how you get it.
Yeah.
This is how you get it. Nobody is skilled at anything until they practice it.
It's true. It's very true.
Right? You hear, oh, he's just a natural. Okay. Very few and far between are people a natural at anything. Okay. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to acquire a new skill set. And once that skill set is acquired, then you build on it. And then you become one of those people who you identify as very talented at what they do. But it takes time to get there. So what does your life look like today? You got a girl in your life? Do you have kids? Are you going to have kids? I mean, how long are you sober?
So I made the choice to not, drink or anything going forward on November 26th of 2016. So that is we're a few months shy of, what would that be? 6 years? Yeah, 6 years.
6 years, yeah.
Yeah, few months shy of 6 years. Been married for 2 years.
God bless you.
Yeah. And that's working out great as well. She's just like me.
I've done that before.
Yeah.
Been there.
Yep. No kids yet. It's something that we want to do. Hasn't happened yet, but it's on the horizon. That's part of the plan anyway, But yeah.
What does she do for work?
She does freelance graphic design, and then she also works in retail.
Gotcha. So do you ever employ her skills when it comes to putting up all these fancy things that goes up on Recovery Unplugged social?
I have not, but I have asked her for advice many times, especially when it comes to design. Many, many, many times. She has a natural eye for things, right? You know, she's one of those people that is an artist. You know how you can be like an artist by trade, but you could also be an artist like by personality, if that makes sense. That's like who she is at heart, you know. She doesn't do well in a typical 9 to 5 environment. She's very free flowing and expressive. We're total opposites. You know what I mean? Like I'm very regimented. I'm up at 5 a.m. I'm in the gym. I'm at work. You know what I mean? Like I'm going crazy all hours of the day. And she really balances me out, right? Like
What do they call that? Yin and yang?
yeah, no, it really is. It's like that with us. I'm constantly going, constantly wired, very, very strict schedules, strict budgets, strict this. And she just really keeps me loose, you know, and like, you know, tell me to slow down and enjoy every minute of life instead of, you know, grinding through every minute of life, you know.
How'd you all meet?
We met out here. We met out here in Austin, and I'll leave it at that.
I'm not baiting you. I really don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah. No.
But
We
now I'm intrigued.
met.
Now I'm intrigued, but you don't have to talk about it. That's okay.
Uh-huh.
We can talk about something amazing that happened for you this past weekend, which was your fantasy team.
Yeah, absolutely.
You broke the 200-point mark.
I did.
On your fan. I've never seen that done. I was reading an article today. I was at the gym. I work out with the trainer 3 mornings a week. And before I start working out with him, I put a little time in on the bike, you know? So I'm on the bike and I'm reading this story about this kid who literally fielded the worst fantasy football team ever.
How many points are we talking here?
He finished the day, luckily, with 46 points.
Wow.
But with good players. In other words, it wasn't like he didn't just draft bench players who saw no time.
Right.
Okay. He literally had the unluckiest, and it was shared. You can look the story up. It was shared all over the place and all the news outlets, Yahoo and Bleacher Report. And on Twitter, he posted it on Twitter, and he didn't realize that it was really going to garner any attention. But he had he had who I had. He had T. Higgins, right, who got a concussion in the first quarter. He had the dude from the 49ers that is now on injured reserve. He had Dak Prescott. He had CeeDee Lamb. So he fielded. So if it makes you feel any better, your team had 5 times more points than his entire team did. At one point, going into Monday Night Football, before Dak and CeeDee Lamb and all that stuff, Justin Jefferson alone had more than the 36 points he had going into Monday Night Football after a full slate on Sunday.
That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible.
My fantasy team did not do as well, but I feel better knowing that I had 123 points based off of this other guy's misery. So, you know, they say misery loves company. I like to have misery around me so I could feel better about myself. If we're being honest. But I don't know. It's all fun and games. So what do you like to do in your free time when you're not waking up at 5 a.m, going to the gym, going to work, being regimented? Like what does Greg Roselle, what you know, what's your thing?
So I got a few things. I definitely got a few things. Some of the stuff that I can do within my house is I definitely game. I play some games, right? I'll pick up the Xbox.
Hide and seek?
What's it? No. Oh, well, I play board games too, but like mostly I'm talking like Xbox and, you know, on my computer and stuff like that. So that's like let's say it's like a Tuesday and nothing's going on and I don't feel like leaving the house and everything's done. I'll probably be doing something like that, right?
Call of Duty? What are you doing?
I like Call
I'm
of
not in
Duty.
the gaming. I'm not
Yeah,
in
I
the
like stuff
gaming.
like that, but I like some of those more like fantasy role playing games where you're like, some guy with a sword fighting dragons. That's more so like my favorite
All
kind
right.
of genre. But outside of that, I really like being outside, right? I live in San Marcos, which is a few suburbs south of Austin. And besides, being known for, Texas State is here, it's famous for its river, right? It's got a spring-fed river that's crystal clear, and we could be 9 months into a drought. It doesn't matter. This crystal clear water is just pumping, right? Because it's spring-fed. It's not reliant on rain or snow melt or anything like that. So I really like going out there. I like fishing. I've
What's the
recently
river
got
called?
what's that?
What
I
is the
want
river called?
I want to say it's called the San Marcos River. But let me double check that.
Bro, how do you not know this?
I just moved here. I moved here in June. I haven't checked it out yet, or I haven't looked it up yet. I should say.
And you're originally from Jersey, right?
Yeah, it's called the San Marcos River. Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
And you're
But
originally from Jersey?
yep, originally from Jersey. I back home. I mean, I was really just mostly into skateboarding, surfing, snowboarding out in the Poconos or Colorado in the winter and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I like it out here a lot. I've gotten into hunting and hiking since I moved to Texas, and that's been like it's like a binge obsession because you can't do it every day, right? There's laws that prevent you from doing it every day. It's a very expensive hobby as well, and it's very.
I've recently started a very expensive hobby.
What's yours?
About a little over 2 months ago, golf.
Oh yeah, they're very similar. They're very similar. They're both very patient and precise sports,
The only thing I kill is the ball, though.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Hey, to each their own. To each their own.
Yeah. Have you golfed?
I have not. I took lessons as a kid, so I grew up, my dad wanted me to golf. My mom wanted me to play tennis. I thought golf was boring, so I stuck with the tennis lessons for a number of years. I don't do either anymore. I would like to get into golf just strictly for the opportunities that are involved with it. You know what I mean? Like some of my buddies, I've got two groups of friends. One goes on hunting trips, the other goes on golf trips. I'd like to be able to go on both. Is really what I'm getting at here.
I mean, I got to a place where I'm 47 years old, and I've been a lefty my entire life. And when I was younger, as a kid, when I say kid, high school, right? My friends who golfed were righties.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd go out with them on the golf course and I would use their clubs, righty clubs, and I was just god awful. And then I got into basketball because I grew tall, and I basically stuck with basketball as like my sport of choice for being active.
Gotcha.
And as you get older, right, basketball does not become as feasible to be out there every weekend, with two herniated discs trying to run up and down a court and block shots. And so Rob, who we were talking about, who's one of my good buddies, is an avid golfer. He's been golfing for 40 years. And he told me, he's like, you really need to just start. So I went a few months ago and purchased some lefty clubs. And wow, it's a little bit easier lefty than it was for me righty. So I've just gone through like 2 months of lessons, and I would say in the last week or so, I'm starting to feel a little bit better about the mechanics of the swing.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you that it has to be ranked as one of the most, if not the most frustrating sports to play.
I believe it.
No doubt. The over under of the word fuck being said on a golf course in 18 holes has to be said at about 172 times.
I believe it, man. I absolutely believe it.
So, and golf club repair from people throwing them or trying to break them over their leg when they get frustrated. I mean, and golf balls, they're expensive.
Yep.
Like, I was with my instructor the other day, and we actually went out on the course after we did the driving range. And when you go on the course, you have to use your real balls. And I'm like digging through my bag for like not my favorite balls, because I just know they're gonna get lost. So It's a very expensive sport. But it's good to hear, Greg, that you're active because there is life outside of work. And that's something I'm guilty of sometimes. I spend, the majority of my life working. And listen, I have an amazing job. And even when I'm working, it doesn't really feel like working. But I have that really hard time disconnecting.
Yeah, for sure.
And finding some solace where every 2 minutes I'm not looking at my phone, right? Because I might miss something. So I do think it's about balance. But listen, thank you for stepping in on a moment's notice. Thank you for sharing stuff about you that people can, actually learn about. Greg behind the scenes, Greg G and Lasagna, Greg, right? We're gonna call you Reg from now on because your G is silent. So you're gonna be Reg Roselle.
I'm with it.
But I really appreciate the fact that you came on here. You talked a little bit about yourself. I know I probably dominated the conversation because that's what I tend to do. We talked about the Oxycontin Express. We talked about the heroin pandemic. We talked about the evolution of this pandemic. We talked about fentanyl. And then most importantly, we started the show off and hopefully continue to talk about National Recovery Month. You have any closing thoughts? Anything you want to leave with the listeners?
Ooh, I would just say, celebrate it. Celebrate National Recovery Month. Whether if you're not in recovery, I guarantee you know somebody who is, right? At this point in time, we've all been affected in one way or another. Just send a little message of encouragement to them. You know what I mean? You never know how far one small deed could go, right? And then, of course, if you are in recovery, don't ever give up on yourself. And that's really it. That's really all I got.
Very well said, man. Words of wisdom from Reg Roselle. That's your new name, Reg.
I'm with it.
All right, man. We made it through episode number 25 of the Rhyme and Reason podcast. Off the cuff, we should call this show Off the Cuff. Because that's what it was. I hope our listeners enjoyed. Tune in next week. We have Judge Ari Porth, who is, I casually refer to him as Mr. Bowtie. And you'll see why probably next week. But he's been an instrumental judge when it comes to drug court and mental health court here in South Florida. Really awesome dude, and I look forward to having him on next week. Do me a favor, Greg. Blow him up every single day until 5 minutes before this. No, he will be on. So we won't have to do another off the cuff session, but I really enjoyed today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you so much.
See ya.